try to keep it interesting and short since we all had a very big meal. So like Larry said, I'm an architect and I've been working in the architecture field for about 30 years now. I know. I started in Compass Architects in 2002 after I had already been working as an architect for about 16 years. And we started it so that we could work specifically with tribal nations. So we work all over the country with tribes on all kinds of projects, from detention facilities, schools, government buildings. We worked up at NICC, we worked at both in Santee and at Nebraska here. We worked here locally in Lincoln. We did the rail yard and all the stuff down in the Haymarket by doing all the new work down in the telegraph district. So we're kind of generalists. We do a lot of different things. And one of the things with architecture, especially Native American architecture, is that there's a lot that's been written about it, but most of it's been written by non-Native people. So this book here, that's what I wanted to show you. This book, Our Voices, is the first book on Indigenous architecture written by Indigenous architects. So it's kind of a big deal. It's a kind of collection of essays on Indigenous architecture from all over the world. So Indigenous architects from New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and the United States, we all wrote chapters in there. And so it's a really good book if you're at all interested in kind of what's happening in contemporary Indigenous design worldwide. What we found, I went to a conference in New Zealand last year, and what we found was that even though we're from all these four corners of the earth, there's a lot of commonalities between all our peoples and our kind of worldview about the earth and our relationship. So my story started long before I was born. My grandfather here, Tammy Eagle Bull, was a leader in our tribe. And when he was in the tribal council, he told my dad, who was in high school at that point, and my dad's brother, one day our tribe, which is Pine Ridge, will have money and we will be able to improve our communities. We won't always be, how we are now. And when that happens, we're going to need warriors and we're going to need architects. So my dad was always interested in architecture, and his brother was always interested in being a lawyer. So they went to their high school guidance counselor, who at the time, and you have to remember this is the mid-50s in South Dakota, which was a very, very racist kind of place. The guidance counselor was a non-Native guy. And he told these two boys who were valedictorians of their classes, they were star athletes, they should have gotten into any college and could have pursued anything they wanted to. He told them, you guys can't go and be those professions. The best you can hope to be is a teacher. So at that time in the 50s, they were sending all the boys to be teachers and all the girls to be nurses. So, one of the biggest regrets of my dad's life was listening to that guy. So he went on to pursue a teaching degree, and he had a long career in education. And he later became the person, if you were going to go to college in the Midwest and you were Native, he was the one who got you there. He got you scholarships, he got you into colleges, he did all that for the BIA. So he was able to kind of, help students in a kind of a broader way. So growing up, I always knew that I was going to go to college. It was never a question. It wasn't like if you go to college or do you want to go to college. It was like when you go to college. And he would talk to me a lot about the difference between, I grew up in that house in Aberdeen, South Dakota, which is off the reservation. This is the house that my aunt lived in on Pine Ridge. So even as a young kid, I could see, the difference. And our schools were equally, disparate. So I would ask my dad, why is that? Why, what's going on with, what is happening that I have this great school, I had a brand new school that I went to school in, and we have this nice house, and, my cousins all, they don't have that, and the town looks different, everything. And he would talk to me a lot about, things happening with our tribe. And I later found out through my travels and working with other tribes that these are pretty universal among all the tribes. I think every tribal people kind of thinks that, you're dealing with these issues and they're only yours. Because you kind of have a myopic view because you're just trying to survive day to day to day to day. So, but these are issues that are happening all over Indian country. And as my dad would talk to me about these things, I started to realize that there were a lot of different ways that you could come back and help your people. And because when I was first thinking about going to college, I was, kind of torn because I knew I wanted to do something that I could go back and help, but I really wasn't interested in being a lawyer. I wasn't interested in being a doctor. And in my mind, those were the only ways that I kind of know to go back and help. And through my dad's interest in architecture and with his job, he was basically in charge of all the tribal schools in the Midwest area. And so in like the 70s, they were building new schools, and so he got to work with the architects at that time. And what he saw was these architects would be hired by the BIA out of like Albuquerque or DC, and these architects would have never been to South Dakota in their life. They would be out in Boston or California or something. They would work with the bureau, not with the school. They would design something that they think is Native American. Usually it was like a school in the shape of a buffalo, or school in the shape of a turtle, or something like that. Plop it down on, go out to South Dakota and start building it. And the community would have no idea what was happening, and they would have not have had any influence on that design or on the program. And therefore, when it was open, they didn't really have any ownership in it in terms of wanting to take care of it and feeling, at all connected to that building. So what he saw was over time then, that building aged quicker than it should have because the community just didn't care about it. So he would talk to me a lot about this stuff too, and showed me that there's other ways, and through my interest in art, which I was thinking about going into fine arts, but as my dad said, gotta make a living somehow. So, but I was also really good at science. I liked, physics and math and all that stuff, and architecture is like kind of the perfect, meeting of those two things. Where it's a very, very creative profession, but it's also very technology based, and especially now with the computer. So, he showed me that all these issues that are facing tribes kind of come back to the built environment, or should come back to the built environment. And the way that I decided when I went to college that I was going to help was to go to architecture school. And since I went to school, as you saw on the slide, I went to Cornell for a year. It was very, very cold out there, so I transferred to Arizona State. There's nice and warm. And then I went to University of Minnesota and got my master's there. So through all this, I knew eventually I would make my way back to Indian country, but I wasn't really sure how. And so I worked for 16 years. I got licensed. I started working. I worked for big firms. I did all kinds of projects. I knew one thing. I knew that I wasn't going to specialize. There are architects that just do hospitals, architects that just do schools or housing. I knew I wasn't going to specialize because I knew tribes would need everything. So when I was with my firms, previous firms, I would just ask to do any kind of project, anything that came up, I would ask to do that. So in my early career, I did everything from I did the original Rainforest Cafe, which was like a crazy project, to like elevator installs. So it was like just everything I could get my hands on, because I wanted to be able to bring that experience back to Indian country. And what I saw once I started working more with Indian country was that this idea of cultural identity and how we as Native people define ourselves is often very, very different from how the outside world defines us. And we're really kind of used to that in terms of our arts, our jewelry, and our dances, and our kind of daily life. We have control over that. That's a lot of things have kind of led us to that. With the Indian Arts and Crafts Act, now we have kind of control over those kind of things. We used to have control over our built environment. Way back, in the traditional times, our houses, our structures were unique to each of our cultures. You could tell when you rolled up on one of these communities who lived there. You know, not by a sign, not by anything like that, but because you knew that that structure was unique to that unique group. And you know, that was something that was true all of the North America. So, and each of our structures that we had back then was unique in terms of that it responded in a very appropriate way to the climate of that area, to the need for security in that area, to the lifestyle of that area, whether nomadic or not, and also to the materials that were available. You know, so they used everything from that area. So there's something that is, you know, now missing in our communities. You know, you can't tell where these are from. These could be anywhere in the United States. And that was the other thing I saw when I first started, you know, traveling for work and going up to these different communities, was the sameness of it all. And we lost that identity of, you know, who we were and who we are as people in our built environment. And so, you know, what does this say about who we are now? And what does this say about where we want to go as Native people? So this is something that's kind of been driving my career for the last, you know, I guess 17 years since I started my firm. And it's been kind of this, you know, overarching theme of how we approach our projects. You know, these issues that we have with the infrastructure and the built environment on tribes are kind of widespread. You know, I was doing some research on another presentation, and I ran across a stat today that says, you know, on the Navajo Nation, which is roughly the size of Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts, there are only 13 grocery stores. You know, so it's such a food desert, and that's pretty common, you know, on most of these reservations. And so there are these real issues of infrastructure, of roads, of, you know, bridges, utility access, as well as the actual physical structures, the buildings. So, you know, for a long, long time now, Natives haven't had a lot of control over how we are seen in either media or in mainstream society. You know, our history's kind of been wiped from history books. When I was in architecture school, American architecture started with the coming of the Pilgrims. There was absolutely no recognition of the cultures that had been here for millennia before that. And that is still kind of the way it is in some architecture schools. It started to change, but you know, there's a little bit of recognition now of Chaco Canyon and, you know, some of these other things, but not overall in terms of, you know, there was these, you know, thriving cultures here and these thriving communities. So, you know, that's something that as Natives, you know, we don't have a lot of control over how people see us and how we're portrayed a lot of times. And, you know, when people hear the word Indian, you know, they think this kind of stuff. And I'm always amazed. I do a lot of speaking and I travel all over the United States, and I was just in Oklahoma where they have a lot of Native people down there. I was speaking to a group of architects, and a lot of people, well, I would say 99% of the audience knew nothing about their neighbors. And that conference was at a tribal casino. You know, so it's just this really, you know, we're still an unknown population, and you know, I think that it's something that we need to change. And you know, this is the architecture that people say when you say, you know, what's Native American architecture? This is what they think. They think it's all this, you know pan-Indian kind of Disney World architecture that represents in their mind Native architecture, which is always tiki. So as you know, as we know, there are many, many, many different types of structures, not just the tiki. So, you know, this identity that we have should also extend to the built environment and our infrastructure and all the things that support our daily life. Tribes nowadays are really, really busy and kind of focused on, you know, the daily struggles that I showed on that slide of healthcare and, you know, politics and, you know, getting funding for that, housing in a basic sense, that they don't really ever think about the building that their government's in, or the building that the clinic's in, or the, you know, all these buildings that get built, and then you end up with a community that more accurately represents the outside world than representing who that tribe is. So there's a group of architects now. We think in the United States that there are maybe less than 50 Native architects. And every time I talk to people, like I just learned a new one tonight, I hear of more and more and more, and we're trying to kind of compile all these names and figure out who we all are, because we want to know that, because together we can make a difference, and together we can become kind of a real force. And so some of these pictures I'm showing are other Native architects from around the country. And one of the things that we're really trying to push with architecture right now, and kind of contemporary architecture, is that as natives, we should be in control of our cultural identity, and that includes our architecture. So Native architects and Native people should be the ones to be in control of that. Now, when I give this talk to architects, they're all like, well, you're just doing this because you want to do all the Indian work. Well, we physically can't. There's 50 of us, and there's 500 and some tribes, so we physically can't. So it's not about that. It's more about it's great if there's a Native architect involved, but more important is that the people are involved, that the community is involved. And a lot of architects, when I was at architecture school, we were taught as architects, you're the expert. You're going to go and tell these clients what they need. You're going to go fix the client's problems for them. And so that's how architects were trained up until recently. So, architects come out of there with these giant heads, and we think that we have all the answers. And so the approach that has been with tribes has been, roll onto the tribe and you see all these issues, poverty, all this stuff. The architect thinks they're going to fix it. They show up at a meeting, boom, here's what you guys need. I know what you need. This is what we're going to do. Boom. And they apply solutions that work in the outside world. So, this idea of controlling the cultural identity, the people have to be in charge of that. The people know what they need. The people know what will work best for them. The people know their culture. So, working with design professionals, Native design professionals, is ultimate, but it's more important that the community is involved. And that, to me, also applies to anything in the built environment. Designing of roads, designing of bridges, designing of the infrastructure. Basically the way it works now is, the government, through either IHS or BIA, will design the layout of the infrastructure on tribes, and then it's kind of limiting to where you can put buildings then. They master plan it, and they decide where things are going to go. So that's where you have these housing communities, and you guys are all probably familiar with these housing communities that are laid out like suburban America, which don't really, support a lot of our community's ideas of family, of the extended family, and of community. And so, those kind of ideas also, I think, need to kind of be wrapped into our cultural identity. We need to live in a way that's the best for us in our communities. So, as Native people, we have a unique view on how architecture and how the built environment should be designed. And all these things are ideas that traditional architects and mainstream architects aren't taught and don't have as kind of innate world views of architecture and of their culture. So, I speak a lot to tribes too, and try to tell them that they are in control of this process. When they hire an architect, they're the boss. The architect may come in there and think that they know everything, but the owners and the client, the tribe, is the one who should have the final say on everything. Other than life safety kind of stuff, because then the architect has to. But in terms of image, in terms of is it going to be a school in the shape of a turtle? Hey, if that's what you want, fine. But that kind of thing shouldn't be forced on you, like I've seen done, and then you have these weird shaped rooms that are trying to fit in this turtle shape. So it doesn't work for the teachers and the staff. So the AICAE is a group that's been around since the 70s, but this is us 2 weeks ago in Albuquerque at our conference. It's comprised of engineers and architects who work in the construction area. So we have a lot of civil engineers, mechanical, electrical, a lot of architects, also planners, community planners, and government representatives. So we're trying to grow our organization and be kind of an outlet. So if any of you are interested in engineering or going into anything like that, this is a great organization to kind of get in touch with, because we do a lot of mentoring. We're very active in AICAE. And so it's I just wanted to put that up there so that you would kind of know who we were. Like I said, we've been around since the 70s, but it's been a very, very small organization because our numbers have been small. When I first joined the organization, when I was right out of college, I showed up to a conference and there were like 10 of us sitting around the conference table, you know? So it's like, now, this is the first time this last conference where we had actually a room that was like twice this size. And I walked in and I was just like, oh, I'm at the wrong meeting. I turned around because I couldn't believe that we had grown that much. And so, you know, it's kind of an exciting time, I think, in Native American architecture and how our communities, I think we're on the cusp of our communities really making a change. And you know, I think that's an exciting time. I'd like to recognize, this is Lou Weller. He was the first Native American architect in the United States. And so he was kind of a pioneer for us. He helped start AICAE and one of our leaders, as well as John Paul Jones. John Paul is still one of our leaders, and he was recognized by President Obama as one of the Humanities Awards. So he's been recognized nationally for his work, largely on the Smithsonian Museum. That group back in the 90s, 80s and 90s, they, or 2004, I guess, was late 90s and into the early 2000s, members of the AICAE got together and they formed a firm. They got together and all partnered in a firm, and then they pursued this project, and they got it. So they worked for years and years and years, and they were, you know, kind of the lead architects on this Smithsonian Museum of the Native American, which is on the Mall in DC. So it's a huge project, and a lot of people don't understand and know that that was done by Native American architects. So as I wrap up here, I'm going to talk to you about one project that to me shows like kind of how this full circle idea of education and community enrichment can really happen. So this is a Pahasipewawaya, which is Porcupine School. It used to be called Porcupine Day School for those of you from Pine Ridge. We were hired to design a new school for them in 2005. This is also the community that I'm from, that my family lives there. My mom and dad live there. My mom's from this community. So I knew it very well. But even then, when we start any project, we have a meeting. We have a community values workshop, we call it, where we meet with anybody who can come. No matter what project it is, we invite the whole community, because we know with the tribe, it doesn't matter if it's a gas station or if it's a detention facility, everybody's interested in it, so they should be allowed to come. And we ask questions and we talk to them about it. And this time was interesting because we asked the parents to bring all the kids. So bring all the kids, we'll watch them, don't worry about them. And so we had all the kids in another room, and we had, you know, a bunch of crayons and markers and paper. We just, you know, started asking them questions about the new school. What does it mean to them? What do you want there? How do you want to feel when you come to school in the morning? What does school mean to you? Do you like school? You know, just all these very open-ended questions. We asked similar questions to the parents. What we don't ever ask is, what rooms do you want in the building? Because that's, you know, that'll come. You know, we figure that stuff out. But we want to know how they want to feel in the building and what the building means to them, kind of emotionally and culturally and as a community. So we did this, and when we got back to the office, we started looking through all the information that we got from them. We saw that what the kids came up with in terms of what the school meant to them and like the issues that they were going through as kids on the reservation and this reservation, it showed us that that the school meant more to them than it would like here in Lincoln, Nebraska. And we do schools here in Lincoln. We never do this process here in Lincoln. The school district does not want us to talk to the parents or the community at all. You know, we meet with the teachers and that's pretty much it. So But knowing, my kid went to the school here, my kids didn't like school because their home life was great. These kids here liked to go to school because their home lives weren't that great. And what they were telling us was, we come to school because it's warm. We come to school because I get fed. I like to go to school because my teacher's nice. I go to school because that's where my friends are and my family's at. So, school was a safe place for them, or they wanted it to be a safe place. And they weren't talking like physically safe in terms of, being in a safe structure. They were talking kind of emotionally safe and having their, kind of needs of getting fed and having a nice word said to them, those kind of safe. And so when we talked to them more about what does that mean, like what would that look like? What would safe look like? They all started drawing houses. And not like the home they lived in, like the res house. They started drawing like, the house that you would draw if you were a little kid, like a box with a triangle on top. And so we said, okay, what does that mean to you? What happens in that kind of house? And they were picturing these houses that you see on sitcoms, like Brady Bunch, or just these different, where the family's happy and there's always food and they always eat together, eat dinner together and stuff like that they didn't have in their lives. And so we decided to approach the school. Like this was going to be a school that was, like 3 times as big as the existing school that they had, and we didn't want them to be overwhelmed by it. So we asked them, we asked the teachers what was their biggest concern, and their biggest concern was that the kids would get lost in this school because it'd be too big. So taking that idea and then the idea of this house, we came up with the Wosampi Tipi, which means learning house. And that combined the teachers' desire to break these grades down into smaller groups so that the kids can feel like at home in a smaller place, with the kids' idea of having a small community, having a chioshwaye, having a group of kids that they will then go through the grades with. And so we arranged the school in these pods that the kids would be in these pods for several years, get to know that pod and understand that was where that was their home. And that kind of became the big idea for the school, the organization, which meant a whole new way of teaching for them. But the teachers were all for it, the administration was all for it because it meant a good way to support their kids. So this became the living room. When we talked to the kids about what does that house feel like and what do you do in that house, they had, a lot of them had this similar narrative of, I walk in the door, I hang up my backpack, I wash my hands, and I go to the living room and I sit down with my family and we have fun together. So that's how we laid out their pod. They walk in, every pod has a door, a physical door. You don't just walk in off the corner, it has a physical door. And then they hang up their backpacks in lockers. The bathrooms are right there, so they wash their hands, and then they go to this space, which we kind of carved out of taking space out of these other classrooms, because this is also a BIA-funded school, so they have very, very strict regulations on what you can do and can't do. And so we were able to get them to buy into this idea of creating this family room or this flex space where these pod grades would all meet every morning. They meet here, they have a prayer, they figure out what they're going to do for the day, and then throughout the day it's used for like art and science and different things. They gather here before they leave. So it becomes kind of the heart of this chioshwaye for that grade pod. The other thing is the school, like many schools on tribes, has to function as a community center, because there's no place in the community to have like elections or to have a meeting as a community or have wakes and funerals, and so that has to happen at this building, which means it needs to be very durable, but it also needs to kind of function for those kind of things and keep school going. So there were these programmatic issues we had to deal with, but in dealing with this cafeteria area, the Oglala is something that happens in our culture over food. It's giving of thanks and honoring people. So the star quilt is a big part of that. So we use the star quilt motif on the floor in this cafeteria area. So every time they go to eat, they're giving thanks. The other thing, in the old school, they had a media center, they called it, but it was this little tiny room that had a few books. No one wanted to go there. And when we were talking to the kids about this new one, we were like, no, it's going to be this big room, and it's kind of like one of the central focus rooms, and it has really cool spaces, for storytelling and all this stuff. We asked them, what did they want in there, and they're like, well, books to us mean dreaming. We can see things and experience things that we might not ever see in our lives. So we decided to use the dream catcher motif in the ceiling with the lighting layout there. To also address this idea of school being too big and the kids losing their identity in terms of being outside, because it's huge. I mean, if those of you have seen it, it sits on a hill, so it seems really big, and you can see it kind of from all over. We wanted them to be able to look at that and go, that's my pod right there. So these are the two pods that, this is the big kids pod and the medium, the mid-grade kids, and this is the little guys. When we met with them, when we asked them about the materials, we had the little guys draw pictures of school, and they all drew something like that. That was what school meant to them. So we decided to use red brick for the little guys, and then have the color palette, both interior and exterior, get a little bit more sophisticated as they got older, so that when they got to the 6A pod, we were using purple brick. So it was a good way that when you're outside, the kids can really clearly see that's my pod there. And when I get older, I'm going to be in that pod. This is the media center I was talking about, so it kind of becomes a focal point. So, fast forward now, I was there, this opened in 2008, and it was really cute because they invited me to be the commencement speaker at their kindergarten graduation. That was really cute. So now, I was there 2018, there's a documentary being made on Indigenous architects, and so they were filming me, and so I took them to this school, and in 2018, so it's 10 years since it's opened, so the kids that we worked with are long out of the school, long graduated. So it's a whole new set of kids, and as we're walking through, we started getting stopped by these students, and they were telling the film crew about the design of the school. They knew all those concepts. And I was just blown away because we've never gone back and given another presentation or anything. So it was amazing to me that the process of involving the kids, involving the community, that has been handed down now, and so that these current students know that, and they understand that this is their school. This is one of the only buildings in this community that has never been vandalized. So the kids take care of it. It looks amazing inside. I mean, it looks brand new still because they won't let their classmates take gum and put it under the desk and stuff because they watch it. They want to make sure it's theirs. The other thing that struck me was when we were designing it, we talked a lot about sustainability. And we through the construction, because it was built right next to their existing school, so the kids got to kind of watch it being built. We would provide lessons to the teachers to talk about materials and sustainability of the material. You never really know if they catch it. Well, this was on one of the walls, and there was this, there was an eagle, there was different kind of motifs, and as I looked closer, these are wrappers from their cereal bars that they get every morning. So one of the teachers says that the kids noticed that they were throwing away all this trash every morning and they wanted to do something with it. So they all started saving them, and then they made this, kind of, new contemporary art. And that, this is the way our cultures are going to survive, as they kind of adapt to the times and they change. And so this to me was a really great example of that. The other way that I feel like this school has really made an impact. I was giving a presentation similar to this at UNL in the spring to students kind of like you that were coming, Native students who were thinking about going to college. They were high school juniors and seniors. And as I was talking about this school, a guy raises his hand and he says, I was one of those kids. I was one of those kids that you worked with. I'm like, wow. So, he was there, he was able to talk about how because of this school, now he's thinking about going into architecture or going into some kind of engineering. So that to me was really powerful. That means more to me than any kind of reward. So in closing, I just want to say that I think it's really great that you guys are all pursuing your education. It's something that we need in Indian country, and we need it in all forms, whether it's healthcare or social services or engineering, architecture. It's something that I think as Native people we really, really need to encourage, and we need to figure out ways that we can all go back and help in some way, or help in a global way, policy things. So thank you. I'd love to, if you guys have time tomorrow, I'd love to have you down at the office if you have any